We're getting details from the RCMP in a landmark terror-related case. Watching the news conference with us, CTV News legal analyst Edward Prutschi. This is, of course, about Amanda Lindhout, taken back in 2008, I guess, and held in Somalia for 15 months. So now they've made an arrest, Ali Omar Adder. If you can explain, please, how it works to sort of carry out the law beyond our borders.
So there's a lot of interesting things that come here, and I think this may be a Canadian first. What we've seen is the RCMP operating. They've been very cagey in the press conference, and we're still sort of listening in as that goes, but they're not prepared to talk about how it is that they came to find Mr. Adder or what other organizations they worked with in terms of other police organizations. But clearly they've been conducting an investigation outside of Canada's borders and have arrested a Somali national in Mogadishu. Now, he was arrested actually in Ottawa, and so the question that everyone's asking, but we're not getting an answer to, is how did he get from Mogadishu or wherever it was he was into Canada? He's not a Canadian citizen. He didn't have status in Canada, but we were told has been in Canada for the last couple of days. And if you read between the lines, we were told there was an undercover operation that was ongoing to investigate and pursue his capture. And it appears as if perhaps he was induced or tricked or lured to come into Canada for the express purpose of being able to utilize Canada's authority to make an arrest for somebody who had committed an offense outside of Canada but against a Canadian citizen. That's sort of the peg, that's the nexus that allows the extraterritorial application of Canadian criminal law. So a very interesting sort of first usage of these provisions that were originally enacted following September 11th and basically counterterrorism, national security regulations.
So would we conclude here that Somalian authorities were included in this investigation, meaning they knew what was going on and approved it?
It's hard to say. I mean, one of the reasons why Canada would be involved and why the RCMP would be involved in this type of thing is that there's likely a lack of confidence, frankly, in the ability of Somali officials to pursue these kinds of cases. Somalia is in many respects a failed state right now, and it has been struggling for many years with terrorism within its borders and really isn't all that capable of keeping its own citizenry safe, much less those of international journalists who travel abroad there. So that's one of the reasons why the RCMP would see its mandate as saying, you know what, this is a scenario where if we don't step in, nobody will. Who's going to protect Canadian interests? Now, they did talk about dealing with other international authorities. That might be Somalis. It might be other forms of intelligence.
Well, it might be Australia, because remember, she was taken with an Australian as well.
So there was, and they made an explicit comment saying that they thanked Australian authorities for their cooperation. So clearly they were working closely with the Australians as well. And what we don't know is, will there be other arrests? Have other people perhaps been lured to Australia so that Australia can take action on behalf of its own citizen? Or is Canada going to be sort of extending itself as kind of world policeman in the circumstances of this case? A very interesting one.
Well, and also we should add, I mean, she was held for 15 months. This was obviously the work of more than one individual.
Yes, no doubt.
So there could be more fallout. The question being on the across-the-border investigation, could then the people of Somalia, the authorities in Somalia, kick up some dust over this?
Well, the arrest was made here in Canada, so that implies a couple of things, right? If they had had cooperation and the capacity, one would have thought, if, for example, this was happening in the U.S., where we have very close security ties, typically you would expect RCMP to give a call to their local U.S. affiliate, and the Americans would make the arrest. There would then be an extradition process, and the person would be handed over here. So when you've got those kinds of supports, you're able to do it that way. In Somalia, clearly they don't have those kinds of supports, and so the undercover operation, I think, was likely designed to bring Mr. Adder into Canada for the purposes of Canada having the authority, having the skills, and having the manpower to do what they did in terms of the arrest. So did Somali authorities have any involvement here? It's not clear, but what is clear is they didn't have the authority to make the arrest, or they weren't involved in making that arrest.
Very, very interesting. A lot more questions sort of coming up about how this went down, especially if you have a suspect on the radar, be that person in Somalia or elsewhere. You don't want to lose them.
No, and the timing is also, of course, very interesting, because once you make this arrest and have this press conference now, as you indicated, there's bound to have been other people, maybe dozens of other people involved in this investigation and involved on the accused side in terms of other people involved in the actual criminality. So where are those people now? Are they hiding out in Australia? Are they international? Are they still in Somalia? Are other people looking for them? You can bet that the Australian authorities were brought into this and told, hey, we've got our guy, we're going to be making our arrest. So if you're looking for your guy, now's the time, because it's going to go global very quickly.
We're making it public. Absolutely. Edward Prutschi, thanks for joining us. I think we'll see you a little later in the morning.
Sure.